Today on Cyberwork, we're speaking with Jonathan Tanner of Barracuda. Jonathan wanted to be a software engineer until he went to his first hackathon. Once he caught the bug, he went from a security intern at Barracuda to chief researcher. We'll talk about using extracurriculars like hackathons to tell your story to future employers. That's all today on Cyberwork. Also, our second Cyberwork Live event is coming up in just a few weeks. On Wednesday, June 23rd at 11 a.m. Central Time, I welcome Eamon Galani, Curtis Brazel, and Ken Jenkins to talk about red teaming. If you have any questions about red team operations, how to get started, or anything else about this exciting profession, email the questions to me at cyberwork@infosecinstitute.com, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can live on the air. That's Wednesday, June 23rd at 11 a.m. Go to infosecinstitute.com/events to sign up and be in the virtual audience live, and send those questions to cyberwork@infosecinstitute.com. And now, let's begin the show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with InfoSec podcast. Each week, we talk with a different industry thought leader about cybersecurity trends, the way those trends affect the work of InfoSec professionals, and offer tips for breaking in or moving up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. In 2013, Jonathan Tanner's career started as a software engineer intern for Barracuda Networks after he won their annual hackathon held at San Jose University, where he obtained his computer science degree with minors in mathematics and linguistics. Jonathan takes part in computer science competitions to this day, such as the DEFCON Wireless Capture the Flag. At Jonathan's first DEFCON, he became enthralled with cybersecurity research, leading to his current position as senior security researcher. Within his 8+ years, Jonathan built Barracuda's revolutionary malware detection ATP platform, and now helps lead threat research program for Barracuda Networks. So listeners in the comment sections of our podcasts and live events always have the same questions. Why can't I find a job? I've got my cert, I can't find steady work. What about this so-called skills gap? Why is it so hard to show my skills to potential employers, and so on? So, it's been said 1,000 times before, but the cert won't get you the job. And, guest after guest has said as much. It can show your potential employer that you have certain baseline skills and understandings, but what it doesn't tell is a story. Your resume, if it isn't filtered out of the pile due to restrictions that are out of your hands, is only going to be in front of your potential boss's eyes for a minute or two tops. If they don't see a story there, you're not getting the call in. Jonathan and I are going to talk about the so-called extracurriculars that you can help your resume, use to help your resume show employers what you can really do, not just what you studied and what you passed. With some of these tips, you have a much better chance of a hiring manager seeing you and not just your certs or educational background. Jonathan, thank you for joining us, and welcome to Cyberwork.
Thank you for having me.
So to start with, I want to start a little more about your cybersecurity journey. Obviously, we talked about it in the bio that you got excited about it at hackathons and stuff. But where did you first get interested in computers and tech, and then in securing them? Is that something that was with you since childhood? Did it come later in life?
Definitely. Since I was a teenager, I grew up like I was a teenager in the 90s when, Windows 95 came out and personal computers were, I wouldn't say becoming affordable, but they were becoming a little more accessible. So
Right.
We had the family computer at home. And so I spent a lot of time on there. And I found articles on how to air quotes hack your Windows computer, things
Right.
like change your startup screen when it's booting to an image of your choice.
Yes.
And stuff like that was very interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
I also, for my math classes, there were graphing calculators were starting to become prevalent, and you can program on those in TI Basic. So I was doing a lot of programming on the graphing calculator, which really got me interested in the computer science aspect.
Yeah, you were sort of just grabbing everything that came along that way, anything that looked interesting, and just sort of figuring it out as you went.
Yeah, definitely. And it was all very new at the time too, like not having completely grown up with computers either. So
right. Did you have friends avenue. Do you have friends who were interested in this kind of thing as well, or was this sort of like your sort of secret hobby?
Yeah, we all most of my friends were interested to varying degrees. And like forums were becoming really popular too, so we'd all go post on forums as well.
Right.
I started with the TI Basic, but then I realized, there's a lot more I could do if I started programming on an actual computer. So I ended up actually taking a C++ course at a community college while I was in high school.
Okay. So
which I don't know if that's an opportunity that a lot of people know about, that you can do that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's very ambitious and cool. So yeah, so how did you find out about this?
I think my mom was a teacher, so she had heard about it from their school counselor there.
Right.
That high school students could enroll in college courses.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Yeah. That's I love hearing about these kinds of obsessions and where they start and early on. So I want to talk to you first about your work with Barracuda. So you started as a software engineering intern, and then in 8 years you've moved your way up to senior security researcher. So can you talk about some of the major accomplishments and milestones along the way that helped you make these significant jumps up?
Yeah, I mean, definitely getting hired in the first place was, as an intern, was a major leap there.
Right.
I kind of got lucky there. I knew I was going to have to find an internship, but after competing in the hackathon, it sort of became a lot easier to instead of having to do the legwork of finding ones to apply to. I already had been offered to interview for an internship there after the hackathon.
So the hackathon wins kind of were a calling card for you then.
Yeah, and it's not that it was guaranteed I would get hired, but it was they were interested in interviewing at least. But competitions are also a great networking opportunity. You might meet someone who's looking for someone with their particular skill set and it's also a good chance to show off your skill set.
Right. Totally. So what is your job progression been like at Barracuda then?
So I started, I was working on smaller projects, like classifiers for very specific things, and did a language detection library while I was an intern and finishing my degree. And then when I graduated, I got hired full time, and my current boss, who I think was one manager in between then, wanted to start the advanced threat protection platform, and he asked me to put that together.
Okay.
So I started working on that right out of college.
Nice. So can you tell us a little bit, people want to sort of imagine themselves in different job roles. So what does your day-to-day work as senior security researcher look like? What are some tasks that you do every day, and some of your favorite parts of the job and things that are the worst or that keep you up on Sunday nights and so forth?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have my day-to-day is typical of necessarily the title, but I do I'll field Q&A requests from reporters on security topics. I'll look more, do deep dives. Well, not that deep. That's still skill sets I'm building out, but I'll look into malware that we're seeing or different threats that our systems are seeing, so that we can both analyze it as well as I'll write blogs about interesting things that we see. So I kind of have a little bit more of on the writing side as well in my job than just straight research.
So you have kind of a media facing portion aspect of your job as well then. So if a story is coming in, then they want sort of an authoritative voice on a piece of malware that's coming through, then you're the person that sort of answers the questions for them.
Yeah, definitely. And also, keeping up with certain trends in security is definitely helpful for that. So that's part of my day to day, as well as building systems to help make my job easier. Because there's lots of data, but it needs to be in a certain format or easier to search through. So I've been working on systems to help with that.
Okay. Now, do you have employees that work under you, and do you have a supervisor that's doing sort of next level up work in terms of security research, or are you sort of like an island in the company?
Um, I'm somewhat of an island. Like our
Okay.
group is small.
Yep.
Like I'm not alone, but it's definitely a small group compared
Sure.
to like, the much larger research, groups in some of the larger, or I wouldn't say larger companies, but other companies that, have been doing it, the research specifically a long time.
Mm-hmm.
There would probably be someone that's just writing the tooling to help the researchers, and then someone would research and then pass it off to someone who's writing the blogs.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah.
Gotcha. So, yeah, so that helps me sort of and gives us a good sense of, where you can go from this position and where it came from and so forth. So, um, was this security researcher? Was this the path you originally wanted to be on? I mean, did Barracuda happen because of the hackathons, or did you do the hackathons to find the type of position that you have at Barracuda? I guess is
I started out wanting to do the software engineering.
okay.
Like even though I had, done the hackery stuff
Mm-hmm.
and been interested in it, programming was, something I not only like enjoyed, but seemed more accessible information wise, because there wasn't the plethora of information on security
Right.
back then and like pen testing and stuff like that. Like that stuff intrigued me, and especially like hackers came out in the 90s, and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it sort of seemed like information that I didn't know if I wanted to devote as much time into going that path
Right.
versus learning how to program
Yeah.
and
So,
software development.
so you kind of got the bug just by doing it, and you were like, oh, this is a lot more fun than I realized.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
When I started going to DEFCON was really when I was like, okay, not only is this like really interesting, but it's also like I was understanding things that I never thought I'd understand.
You had a natural
Like,
acuity for it then too.
yeah, and sort of also just overcoming the because the you think, oh, it's these people that do all these things that I couldn't possibly understand without like a ton of learning, but then just from using computers, you're like, oh, well, I understand that. I might not be able to do what they do yet, but I can understand what they're saying about what they did.
Gotcha. So, we've talked to people at all sort of different levels in their careers. We've talked to CEOs, we've talked to help desk people, and thing that we hear a lot is that every job can be done several ways. One, you can do the requirements of the position thoroughly into the letter and get praised for it. Two, you can expand the position. So you might incorporate new duties or new levels to benefit the company. Or three, you can expand yourself and essentially, to use the words of a previous guest who was a security manager, you can basically automate yourself out of a position, basically creating systems that are so efficient that you're freed up to take on higher quality and higher difficulty tasks. Obviously, one of those is going to cause you at the very least to get stuck in the job you have, which clearly hasn't happened to you. So how did you expand yourself and or your position into the job where you are now to go from intern to chief researcher?
In addition to just doing like going to DEFCON and researching, learning on my own, and as well as on the job, like because I built a malware platform, I would see samples, like we'd have false positives, false negatives. So
Right.
I had to gain an understanding of why it was getting triggered or not, and that really intrigued me as well.
Yeah.
And I sort of just at one point realized that was something I wanted to do more so than the software development at that point. And I expressed that to my manager, and I was very fortunate that he, helped me along that path. Like,
Okay.
that's not every job situation is going to be like that, where they're like, oh, well, you really want to do this, let's find a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to and grateful to my manager for that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Now, so we had you on the show here because we want to talk about some of the ways that you can show off your so-called "quote unquote" extracurriculars in your resume that will sort of tell your story quickly and clearly to potential employers. A good place to start with your ideas is, looking specifically you, Jonathan, at your very well utilized LinkedIn profile. I always like to look at everyone's LinkedIn before I get started, and you have this great, well-organized list of skills and licenses and certifications, education, job roles that tell a larger story than if you were to say simply show your 8 years of employment with Barracuda out of college. So I want to start with conceptualizing your resume or your profile. What's the first step in taking an assessment of your accomplishments, especially those that would be attractive to a potential employer? And do you have any tips for what to include or what to leave off or how to order them into telling your personal story?
Yes. I'd say first off is listing everything. Like, you want to know what you're dealing with, and then from there you can look at like what do you think will be most impactful, or maybe there's a lot of things that can be condensed into a larger picture, like they're all somewhat related, and you can say, well, instead of I did this little project and this little project and this little project, you're like, I've worked on several projects. And then that becomes a more effective bullet point, I think, than like listing everything and then they get overwhelmed. You can say, well, I worked on 10 projects, and they're like, oh, okay, wow.
That one data point sort of tells them that you have this sort of like long-term commitment to this one particular type of project.
Yeah. I think it's also about, because you're going to be, learning and adding to your resume over time.
Yep.
Work with what you have and then replace it, as you go along. Like most of the, like certificates and stuff on there on my LinkedIn personally are like Coursera courses that I took when they were starting out.
Yep.
And you get a certificate at the end. But I mean, if I went out and got a cybersecurity certificate, I would probably, condense those down into like a smaller point and then emphasize more the certification. So, it's a lot about, just telling that what your accomplishments are and sort of emphasizing the ones that are going to be the most attractive, I think, to your employer.
Yeah, no,
you've got to have something.
Yeah, well, to that point, that a lot of times I get the sense that people don't have something. So the next step after taking such a skills background assessment for some of our listeners is maybe realizing that they still don't have a lot of projects or skills or other points in the map that they can show off. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the ways that beginning cybersecurity pros can engage in personal investment to make themselves more valuable to potential employers? I mean, Coursera is an example, but like, what are some, it's one thing to sort of learn in secret, but what are some ways that you can both learn the thing and then also sort of well document it,
there's a lot of opportunities out there like that, people could look for that will look great on the resume, such as, the competitions are one aspect, but there's nonprofits like Hackers for Charity, where you can actually go work on security projects for a charity.
Oh, wow.
And then that's a great bullet point on a resume. Like, you have the experience and you also have like done outreach work. You can go find, if you know some programming or learn some programming, you can go find a GitHub repo and start helping maintain that project. So just looking for any way to sort of showcase and build your talents in a way that's going to be like, that's going to stand out or
demonstrable.
Show that you.
Yeah, I'd never heard of what was it called? Hackers for Charity.
Hackers. They might have changed their name, but it definitely was called Hackers for Charity.
Wow.
Last time.
It's like Habitat for Humanity, but for cybersecurity people.
Yeah, and it's a great organization. Like
interesting.
They'll help out a lot of other nonprofits that need security work.
Okay.
Whether that's incidents or just building up security.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you talk about some of the extracurricular activities that you that you can engage in, that not only level up your experience, but so I want to talk specifically about like the hackathons and the DEFCON hacking conferences, because we have a series of capture the flag walkthroughs on our page, and certainly people are doing these sort of things to get their sort of pen testing skills up and out. But talk about the sort of hackathon experience and the DEFCON hacking conference experience. Like, how did you discover it? How did you sort of like get engaged in it? And did you feel overwhelmed at first, or did you feel like you sort of immediately took to it?
I had a coworker that invited me to the first DEFCON that I went to, and like he was like, "Yeah, I think this would interest you," and So I went, and like that was like I really did get hooked then. And I mostly went to the talks at that one, which was fun and interesting. But if you're trying to like really like level up, you know, your resume, definitely like the activities and the competitions or and workshops. They offer workshops, and it's not just DEFCON. Like any cybersecurity conference will have like competitions and workshops, and also just networking with people. I mean, finding out more information. I mean, the first time I did the wireless CTF, our internal security team had done it the year before, and I was there like kind of by myself. Like they were there, and then I was there, and we met up, and they're like, "Hey, we're doing this competition. Would you like to compete with us?" And like I didn't know that much about wireless security. Like I knew you could crack web and WPA, but beyond that, like they were, you know, it gets a lot more advanced than that. And just, you know, by going and competing in the competition, I found stuff that was interesting. I learned a ton for, you know, the future competitions. So like I'd say, don't be afraid to try something just because you think you don't know about it. There's always, you know, if it's not structured so that you can't, you know, collaborate with other people, there's always going to be people that are like willing to help you out along the way.
Gotcha.
And you know, you'll learn a lot.
Yeah. Now, what when you did the hackathons, were these more in person at the time? I'm assuming like nothing's really in person right now, but have you done hackathons sort of since COVID, and is it any different than it was, or was everything sort of like dialing in from people's homes?
No, yeah, it was all in person.
Okay.
Last year's DEF CON, they did do the wireless CTF. Actually, all the competitions that went on were done remotely.
Okay.
I didn't participate as actively in the wireless CTF because I wanted to sort of, after like 4 years, I wanted to sort of see what else is out there as well. But like there was a blue team CTF they did completely online, where it's like, you know, defending a network from like fake like mock attackers. And so like they definitely did a great job of digitizing the competitions, you know, to be possible, you know, from a remote, the virtual conference.
Gotcha. So, you know, unless we put all the obligations of you know, connecting professionals to companies on novice professionals, you know, people who are out there and have qualifications and want to work, it's been noted many times that one aspect of the cybersecurity skills gap is that there's just too many hiring managers and HR departments overstuffing their job listings with restrictive requirements that filter out worthwhile candidates. So do you have any thoughts on ways that the screening process could be improved? Is there any way that we can get the people doing the hiring to stop looking for unicorn candidates?
Yeah, I think one thing that came to mind was like looking for passion as opposed to necessarily having all the qualifications. I mean, any tech job, for the most part, you're not gonna, unless it's like a very senior level job, the person coming in is not gonna, you know, completely know how to do everything from day one. You're gonna have your own internal tools they have to learn, their own. You may have libraries if it's a development job that they have to learn. Like you have to expect that there's going to be some on the job learning. So like you know, a passion for what you know, for learning, and also, you know, what's, you know, an aptitude for learning. Like those are the things. Like I've interviewed a couple of people for programming jobs when I was like transitioning over. We had to like find someone who could take over the ATP platform.
Gotcha.
And that's what I was looking for. It was like, you know, the aptitude, like to learn the systems and how to do them.
Now,
as opposed to like, do they have the skills?
How did they sort of translate that passion? Was it in the in-person interview, or were you able to sort of read something in their resume that says, oh, this person, you know, is clearly passionate about this? Like, were they able to tell the story sort of on paper or on the screen, or did you sort of get a better sense just by sort of interacting with them in the real world?
I got like a small sense from the resume, but it's definitely the interview. And I think that's like been said about, you know, the hiring or getting the jobs too, is like getting that interview is the hurdle. It's like getting your resume to get the interview.
Yeah, what were some of the things in their resumes that you said, "Oh, okay, I have a good feeling about this person"? Like I'm always trying to sort of help out people who are, just listing things in a very dry way. Like, what did you see where you're like, "Oh, that's an interesting turn of phrase," or "Oh, that's an interesting achievement that they had," or "I wouldn't have thought to look for that," or what have you?
Like projects a lot. Like even if it was for school, like they'd give a description about the project.
Yep.
And you could tell they like enjoyed working on it, and
Got it.
and as well as knew how to do it in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So once you've received the interview, and since you've done some interviewing, you can speak to this, but what things should cybersecurity professionals be ready to talk about with the interviewers to show off their best qualities? It'd be hard if, for example, hiring managers, rattling off a bunch of rote questions about your best and worst days on the job and what you like and don't like to do. But like, how do you steer the conversation towards the sorts of things that you excel at and that the interviewer should want to know about you, even if they don't know to ask about it?
I mean, definitely think about, what you're bringing to the table, as well as how that relates to the job posting, maybe. So they may not be asking all of everything that was listed in the job posting, but beforehand you can say, well, it required this skill, which I have. So even if they don't ask you about it, you could sort of bring that up and show your knowledge of that. I mean, ask them questions. I'd say don't be afraid to admit if you're not as familiar with something, like, and then focus on the things that you are. One thought that I had, that if you had a multi-interview situation, like if there was something that you weren't that familiar with in the first interview, go and learn about that before the second one. So like if you come back, and especially if it's the same person, and you've learned something that you didn't know in between the two interviews, that shows that you really are like go-getter and motivated.
Absolutely.
And I think
that'd be a weird thing if you're in your third interview, you're like, nope, still don't know about it.
Also, I think like sort of treat it like a little bit more like a conversation than like a test that you have to pass.
Right.
In programming, everyone always brings up like the whiteboard problems, like dreads the whiteboard problems. And like in my experience, like it's not so much about getting the right answer as they want to see how your thought process works and how you reason through your problem solving. What you write on the whiteboard may not work, but if it seems logical and like what they were looking for, then at least if I was interviewing, that's what I'd be looking for more than can this code written on a whiteboard actually compile? Like I wouldn't expect that.
Gotcha. So I want to also talk about your thoughts on job longevity, because as we said, you've been with Barracuda for 8 years, and in a place like Silicon Valley where people are moving between jobs every couple of years, you've really planted your flag in the sand with Barracuda now. So what can you tell us about working for a tech company with a long-term plan, and what might you say to people who might say that your opportunities at one job start to diminish after a few years?
I mean, it probably is true that depending on the job, your opportunities might diminish, and I can see that as an argument for trying to find something else. But make sure that your opportunities have diminished before. Like you can't be impatient either. Like, oh, it's been 1 year and they haven't promoted me to the next level. Like you have to be patient sometimes, but also on the lookout. If your opportunities are not that you want, are not fitting. I've been fortunate because Barracuda's been very great about not just embracing like my career paths, but they'll actually, like, my manager will actually ask me like, what would you like to be doing? And if I express things I'd like to be doing, there's like a conversation there of like career path and opportunities. I mean, we've had people in the company that like completely did like a completely different job, ended up in a completely different job just because they were like passionate about it. And not every company is going to be that flexible, but you find the ones that are, and you can go a long way.
So let's move to that. What do you want to be doing? Like, can I get a little sense of what your 5-year plan, what you're trying to see? Because you've been very sort of passionate about expanding and growing yourself. What are you trying to sort of move to next within Barracuda?
I'm trying to, like, I really want to get a lot more in depth into sort of like the role that I'm in. Like I love doing the research and especially like the outreach on it, the writing. I gave a conference talk once, like that stuff interests me, you know, passing along information. So I kind of just want to grow that by, you know, becoming better at the research and also, you know, better at the outreach.
Right. Okay.
Like start giving more conference talks,
Yeah.
building white paper or writing white paper, stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, and that gives you, you know, they always say you learn best by teaching to someone else. So that gives you a chance to sort of further your learning by making it accessible to other people. So we could, you know, keep talking about this for ages and ages, but you know, I can almost hear listeners yelling through the monitor wanting me to ask, you know, some more questions, specifically their questions. So let's talk resources. So what do you suggest for security professionals who still have these nagging questions about employment qualifications and moving up the ladder in the industry? You know, because like I said, all the time, every video has comments like, where do I start? How do I start? I don't know where to start. Like, how do you sort of, well, that initial sort of like worry of not knowing where to start?
I'd say start with what interests you. Like, you know, if cybersecurity is a very expansive area. Like, so what specifically interests you? Is it like red teaming, blue teaming, you know, bug hunting or bug bounties, which also is another good way to get noticed.
Yeah.
So like you ultimately, I would say, or at least in my opinion, you know, is people want to have a job that they feel fulfilled and enjoy. So, you know, focus on the aspects of what you enjoy doing and learn as much about that, and then you'll pick up things along the way that may interest you as well.
Nice.
Like me with the security or doing the security research in the first place. Like I started out with
There you go.
software and then was like, oh well, the research aspect is really interesting to me. Like,
yeah, so keep your eyes open, among other things, and be willing to make huge changes in a short period of time. I think that's I think that's not always so easy for everybody. Is, you know, well, I had my whole life built around being a software engineer or something like that, and then to find out something else, it's like, oh well, maybe I won't bother. You know, I already have this whole plan set up. You know, so. I mean, did you have any sense of that you would sort of like, it sounds like you were just so excited. So you didn't really have a feeling of like, oh, sadly, I'm closing the door on this thing that I really had my heart set on or anything.
Yeah, I didn't have that sense. I kind of lost a little bit of luster for the software development at that point too.
Okay.
Which is coming back luckily as I'm working on these projects. I mean, there's one thing with the software development versus cybersecurity that they sort of are interrelated. Like knowing how to code is definitely a huge asset when it comes to the cybersecurity work, whether you're just writing scripts or analyzing a piece of malware to understand how the code was written that created it. Like having at least a basic understanding of programming is almost essential to you know, cybersecurity work. Or you might be writing an analytics platform or something like to catch.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Learn. Yeah. Know every aspect of it if you can. Know the network. Know the security. Know the engineering of it, and that's also going to sort of put you on better footing than other people with the same security certifications that you have. But you know, not a story.
Yeah. And
so,
I think also like gain experience however you can. Like.
Yep. Yeah. Try something. Start somewhere. Start anywhere. So as we wrap up today, tell us more about Barracuda, the company, and some of the projects and products that you're really excited about right now.
I really like as I've gotten deeper into the cybersecurity stuff, I realize how much, you know, protecting your entire business organization is not just like this one thing that you protect against. It's like a total package of different things working together.
Right.
And like I like the direction that we're taking as a company to, you know, provide those solutions, and you know, we're trying to make them more seamlessly operate together. Because that's what's really like, you know, all the attacker needs is one way in your network.
Yeah, that is true.
So
yeah, finally, if our listeners want to know more about Jonathan Tanner or Barracuda, where can they go online?
our website for the company, as well as our blog. I have some posts on there, and that also there's a lot of other people that write blog posts, from stuff that they're seeing.
And what's the address for that?
Blog.barracuda.com.
Okay, perfect. Jonathan, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I do have a Twitter. It's been a while since I've been on there, but I am on Twitter, jtannersec.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I feel like most of my guests say something similar. I got a Twitter. I'm not on it, but so okay. So what was it? What was it again? Barracuda. Oh, blog.barracuda.
Blog.barracuda.com.
Very good. Okay, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights with us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And as always, thank you to everyone who is listening today, either at home or at work from home. New episodes of the CyberWork podcast are available every Monday at 1 p.m. Central, both on video at our YouTube page and on audio wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. And heads up, our second CyberWork live event is coming up in just a few weeks. On Wednesday, June 23rd at 11 a.m. Central Time, I welcome Eamon Galani, Curtis Brazel, and Ken Jenkins to talk about red teaming. If you have any questions about red team operations, how to get started, or anything else about this exciting profession, email them to me at cyberwork@infosecinstitute.com, and we'll do our best to answer them live on the air. That's Wednesday, June 23rd at 11 a.m. Go to infosecinstitute.com/events to sign up and be in the virtual audience live. Thank you once again to Jonathan Tanner and Barracuda, and thank you all for listening and watching today. We will speak to you next week.